If you're looking for the next big thing to invest in, you might be thinking you should embrace the brave new future of artificial intelligence. And you would hardly be alone. From 2022 to 23, private investment in AI technology increased eightfold.
And last year, NVIDIA, a company that makes the
Eightfold is quite a bit of return. They're talking about NVIDIA. NVIDIA was the biggest company for being the primary manufacturer of GPUs in particular, which were the advantageous chip to actually train and run AI models on. So basically, they were just raking in the money as this AI trend came in.
semiconductor chips that AI relies on briefly became the most valuable company in the world as investors rushed to ride the AI wave to huge investment gains.
But anytime the price of an asset inflates that fast, it can start to look like, well, a bubble. So are the billions of dollars that companies and investors are pouring into AI technology paying off?
Or could the bubble be about to burst?
If you've used AI models like ChatGPT or Midjourney, or at least read that AI overview that appears at the top of every Google search now, you might believe that AI technology is about to be a part of all our lives.
At least that's what tech companies like Google, Meta, and Amazon are betting on. This year, these companies are projected to spend $185 billion on developing AI tools. And thousands of startups are popping up to race these tech giants to build the model that will change the way we work, create art, and communicate with each other. Their investors are optimistic that the rise of AI will pay off big.
But for others, all the hype around artificial intelligence reminds them of another tech boom that happened in the 90s. In 1994, the same year that the first online shopper used a browser to order a Steam CD, a young Jeff Bezos set up the book-selling website that would eventually become Amazon.
As everyday people started using their dial-up connections to send emails and access chat rooms and even shop, online marketplaces like eBay and Expedia soon followed, hoping to monetize the internet. These early dot-coms raised millions from investors and burned through it just as quickly, hiring employees, building servers, and taking out.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in the past. The dot-com bubble was huge, and basically you could 3, 4, 5x the value of your company, maybe even more, just by adding like .com into the name of your company. So like eBay.com or Amazon.com, for instance. And so many companies were making it rich at that point in time. And this strategy that they're referencing of taking in all this money, this was sort of a shift in mindset for technology companies that still is true today, where if you're a company basically other than a tech-based company, there's a certain expectation of how much money you're going to be able to earn for the amount of money invested. And generally, it's pretty strict for aiming for profitability pretty early on. But tech companies are pretty unique, I would say, in so much as they're given a lot more leeway in order to be burning money and not profitable for a much longer time. Amazon popularized this model, Facebook popularized this model. And so this is something that kind of allowed tech also to kind of get away with it, because effectively it's some form of like R&D. You build in a lot of effort at the beginning, and then that pays off later on. And so that's how you can basically justify that large investment with little return. But it also makes it easier for scamming companies or companies that are not as thoroughly vetted to actually try to pretend this is what they're doing, even though they're not. And this led to a lot of companies not doing well in the dot-com bubble when basically times got rough and people realized that like a lot of these companies weren't actually making any money. They were just burning money and that they didn't want to be invested in them anymore.
Out flashy Super Bowl ads to grow fast and beat out the competition.
But when many of these startups failed to turn a profit by the year 2000, investor enthusiasm cooled. Over the next 2 years, the NASDAQ stock market index fell 77% from its peak, and dot-com companies that had made initial public offerings without ever being profitable began to file for bankruptcy.
Even though the dot-com bubble burst, its technology still changed the way we live now. You may not log on to mp3.com to buy your favorite artist's new single, but you do shop online, right?
The early dot-com industry experienced what economists call a market correction. The companies were valued too high too fast, so a drop in the market brought prices back down to reality. From there, companies that couldn't turn a profit failed, and companies that could make money continued to grow at a slower, steadier pace.
Still, it left behind technology infrastructure and employee knowledge that got reused in the next wave of tech startups, and consumer behavior eventually followed. Now, 1 in every 5 retail transactions happens online.
The dot-com bubble and its aftermath may give us a preview of what could happen with AI.
I'm actually a little surprised by that stat. They just said 1 in 5. I would have expected it to be a little bit more. I feel like I'm probably closer to like 1 in 2, maybe 1 in 3, maybe even better than that. But if this also includes a variety of folks, obviously like older folks are not as inclined to buy things in person. And if I include like groceries and stuff, I could see that kind of leaning in a little bit more, but especially considering all the hype on all these stores that you get on your phone and all these new apps, I would have certainly expected a higher number than 1 in 5.
Actions happens online.
The dot-com bubble and its aftermath may give us a preview of what could happen with AI. Amid all this FOMO-driven investment, AI companies will have to figure out how to turn a profit in order to merit their sky-high valuations. But in contrast to scrappy web startups, this may be even more challenging for AI tech.
AI companies are expensive to operate. They require massive data centers to process all.
Yeah, this is a really good point that they're bringing up. So being in the industry, this is definitely true. AI takes a lot more to set up than it does for like a random website. And so you can start things off with like an MVP that's a pretty small proof of concept for something that you could leverage AI for. I think unfortunately what I've been seeing a lot is similar to what I was seeing with like blockchain just a few years before, where a lot of companies just added blockchain in to like get some investor money or something like that. And I remember asking some of these companies like, why would you choose blockchain for this particular product? And they'd be like, it's the new thing. That's why we're using it, which is a terrible reason to use something. Blockchain actually has particular merits to it for particular use cases. And so they were just adding it in to kind of add in some buzzwords to their company to maybe get some more funding and make it rich or something like that. AI, I feel like, is similar. And here's where AI is just a tool, similar to like blockchain, for instance. It is a tool, and you could try using it for a variety of purposes. AI is definitely a much more versatile tool than like blockchain, for instance. And so you're going to be able to apply it to a lot more use cases and a variety of products that could exist. But also you're fighting against much larger companies like a Google or an Amazon or a Meta or OpenAI, etc., that have a lot of data. They already have themselves set up and entrenched in certain areas, and then people, even who don't know how AI works, can just leverage those tools. And I think that's something that is interesting, that I think is actually going to make AI more predominant in the market, broadly speaking, is that I think there's a lot of folks who are less technical, or maybe not even technical at all, who are using AI to build products that have a particular purpose. And I think that's really what AI companies should be doing. But a lot of them are just saying, here's a cool thing I can think of for AI, and I'm just going to build it. And if I build it, they will come and there will be profitability, etc. But that's not how it actually works in reality. And so there's a scenario where some people are taking these AI models like ChatGPT or something like that, and then they build a tool on top of it. So maybe they have a particular use case, maybe they're writing blogs, and then they just basically give some prompts and then they send it over to ChatGPT. ChatGPT returns back like a summary or a few paragraphs, and then boom, you have a blog entry about some topic. And that's a great idea. I think that's where people write blogs, people want more content. Having a specialized use case that leverages AI in some way is likely going to have a much clearer value add for your customers, and it's much easier to then ask them to pay for something. Whereas AI right now, a lot of the big names that you know of are usually SaaS, so they're enabling you to use their system as is for whatever purpose. And this is easy for them to develop and start to add new features, but it isn't necessarily a product in and of itself. And so I think this is where, for profitability, you need a core product. You need to be able to make a sale to another person, which means you need to have a problem that you are solving for them. And in some cases, these AI startups are making toys, for lack of a better term. It's something you play around with. It's cool for sure, without a doubt. They're advancing very quickly, but there isn't necessarily a purpose to them. And so this is where I think some companies are starting to come up with purposes for leveraging AI, but the original AI startups, not all of them have a purpose other than let me build something cool and see what I can do with it.
That data that large language models, text-to-image generators, and other AI tools use to generate results. Think racks and racks of all those NVIDIA chips. ChatGPT alone runs on tens of thousands of them, and at $30,000 a pop, they don't come cheap.
These data centers also require lots of electricity. ChatGPT, for example, uses as much electricity as 17,000 US households per day. Even without considering the environmental costs of this energy demand, that makes for a pretty hefty electric bill.
And then there are the legal issues. Increasingly, media companies like the New York Times and Getty Images are suing AI companies for using their content to train AI models without their permission. And the American government, fearful of how the technology could be used militarily, is putting restrictions on who manufacturers like NVIDIA can sell their chips to. The result for AI companies may be less revenue from overseas and higher costs on things like legal fees and licensing agreements.
So AI models are backed by big investments to match their big overhead, but are they bringing in big profits?
Not yet. While one of AI's biggest players, OpenAI, is expected to bring in $3.4 billion in revenue this year, they're still spending more than double that on training their model.
Tech giants are seeking deep.
So it's unclear whether they included other costs with this or if they just meant broadly speaking. But training a model is not going to be the only cost that they have. They also have employee costs. They have retail and real estate costs for their office building, maybe data centers or anything like that they're using. So that could just be a fraction of the overall cost they are. And this is definitely what I'm seeing in the industry, especially if you want to build a new AI model that's state of the art. You're usually spending millions of dollars in order to build something that's actually competitive and state of the art for a particular purpose. And that's where it's very, very expensive. And that's why I think some of these smaller companies who are thinking about how to use AI are much better off because they don't need to do that initial R&D investment that like OpenAI did. They can come up with a thought process behind a product, test out OpenAI, make a couple calls, maybe even if they pay for it, they pay $10, maybe $100 to do a small test, just see some various samples, and then say, yes, this is actually going to meet the purpose of my needs, and then I can sell a product based off of this. And then you can make everything work out financially for you for those transactions between you and your customer and you and ChatGPT. So this is something where it's very, very expensive to build, much more expensive to build than like a website was even back in the day, I would have to imagine. And these types of things are probably going to get more expensive. Whatever the next version of AI is in the tech sector, likely it's going to be even more expensive to do because everything that's easy to be done has already been done. And so that's one of the challenges with this is such large overhead, and you have to figure out some way of recouping those costs. And you need to have a particular product in mind. And a lot of these companies didn't necessarily start with that.
Pocketed business clients, promising that AI will increase efficiency and productivity and even replace human workers. But businesses are approaching AI tentatively. In a McKinsey survey, 63% of respondents said inaccuracy of AI tools poses significant risk to their business.
Until AI models can reliably avoid producing factual errors or freaky images of 8-fingered hands, many businesses are hesitant to fully rely on AI for their most important functions.
There are some early signs that the market correction is coming for AI. Even though NVIDIA stock continues to soar in 2024, major players like Meta and Microsoft saw stocks dip this year as investors doubted their all-in approach to AI. Newer AI startups like Babylon Health and Stability AI have gone from billion-dollar valuations to mass layoffs and bankruptcy filings.
As we saw in the dot-com boom, a few AI companies could become the next eBays and Amazons, but others may go the way of mp3.com.
But when the dust settles, the remaining skilled workers and tech infrastructure could spell a future for AI that doesn't have to live up to quite so much hype. And that's our 2 cents.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.